Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
She's been helping people all over the world heal from addiction, trauma, and she does it in a very interesting way. And go with me on this, with horses. Yes, it is possible. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and then some. Kathy Slagter joins us, and she's with One Neigh. Notice the horse reference, oneneighatatime.com. Kathy, great to have you back. How are you?
Hey, great. Thank you. Thank you. The weather today is keeping me in a gloomy mood. So I'm trying to get myself all hyped up and, change my state, as they say, to gloom to bloom.
Love that. Love that. Is that boom or bloom?
Bloom, like a flower blooms up.
That's what I thought. Okay. Well, you think about it, we use the horse analogy and you use horses to help heal. All right. So it's, it's cloudy, could be rainy, could be chilly, windy, whatever it might be. The horse doesn't know. I don't think the horse cares, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I don't know. They love to lay out in the sun like we do. When that sun shines, they are laying and basking in the sun and enjoying themselves. And, they don't like the hot heat, and they probably don't like the really cold. But I would say this kind of weather is probably one of their favorites. I have a really fuzzy dog and he loves this weather too. So, I still think the sun makes their bodies feel better as it does to us. It gives us a little bit of a pep in our step. If you walk outside and the sun is at that perfect range, there's a too hot and a too cold, and there's always something to complain about. If we want to, we can find it, that's for sure.
But this is where my mind goes. We talk about energy and why are horses so proficient in helping people heal is, we talked about this before, that they pick up on somebody's energy. Maybe it's the energy of the sun. Maybe that's part of it. That's why they feel invigorized. Maybe that's why we do too. Who knows?
Right, right. There's, it has vitamin D or something like that in it. So it fills us up with an energy that we all need. Goodness, I can go to Florida for a couple of weeks and feel revived and walk off the plane and see the Dole and go, it can hit you. And that I'm sure the horses feel that same thing, because they are very, very powerful in the vibrations of energy, and energy definitely comes from the sun, and it comes from us, as we've discussed before. And one of the energy things, number one, in the big book, the big book is Alcoholics Anonymous, which I'm in recovery. So I work with a lot of people that are in alcoholic recovery or recovery of their lives of some sort. And, one of the things, the very first step is accepting, and it goes from accepting to believing in a power that's greater than yourself. And then down the line to number 4 is forgiveness and resentments and things like that. So I kind of want to feel into what it feels like to forgive. We just went through Easter, and I know Easter is about he is risen and all that kind of stuff, but he rose to help us to forgive ourselves, to forgive our sins, and ask that we forgive others. Everybody has their way of saying it, but that's kind of what I held on to this Easter when it came and went. And, how can I in this world, this world that seems to be blowing up in our faces sometimes, it depends on how you look at it again, but, there's so much that we do in our lives. And I just recently had something where I didn't know that I hurt somebody, but yet what I said and how I said something inside of her, she felt saddened and didn't want to talk to me for a couple of days. And I was like lost as to, what did I say and how come I said it that way? Why did she take it that way? And, it wears on you. Forgiveness is like an energy puller.
Mm-hmm.
It pulls out of us the sadness of living in what did I do wrong and I want to make it right. It can really wear you down. And people, when they get into recovery, they want to step right into that because that's holding them down still, right? And if you run into, say, I had an argument with you and I run into you, it's awkward, whether I was drunk or sober or whatever, it can be very awkward to run into you. So people want to clear that up right away. And, you might not understand that I'm on a different route. I'm on a different recovery journey and I'm feeling better and I'm going to want to say I'm sorry and I want you to accept it, right? And if you don't, then I'm just supposed to accept that. But for this person who really feels deeply about how she presents herself to people, that can wear on me. Even though I said I'm sorry and you chose not to forgive me, what do I do with that space in between of how do I move forward if somebody isn't willing to forgive me? And was it the right time to say I'm sorry? We say our sorries to people when they're in a state that isn't ready to accept an apology. And that can hurt somebody who worked themselves up to say, hey, Steve, I'm really sorry for how I acted a month ago or 2 years ago, however long you're holding this resentment for something that I did for you. And you're like, well, I don't see any changes in you. Why would I forgive you? You're just going to go out and drink and do it again tomorrow. At what point do we find ourselves ready to forgive? And how do you do it?
Very powerful. And it ain't easy.
No, it's not. And that's where me and the horses can help you to get through to that point. And I love doing this with the horse. I love having them like stand in support, stand with their energy that softens who we are, and allows ourselves to relax enough to really think, because our minds are crazy, if I'm mad at somebody or somebody's mad at me, I can't stop. It's so hard to stop my mind from going and going and going and going and going, right? And the horses don't live in that space. They can feel that you're being drained by that, but they don't know what's going on. At least this is my opinion. They don't know what's going on up there. Why, maybe they feel that like it's a negative thought. I do feel like they can maybe even picture what we're thinking about in their heads. That could be also a little bit of how they read us. I'm finding that out a little bit more by Melissa Pierce has talked recently about that. And, when we think something and we put a vision to it in our minds, that the horses might be able to relate a little bit to that vision. That's pretty cool in itself. Sure. Yeah.
How do you, it goes both ways. So you want to forgive somebody else, so you have to find it in your heart to do that. And then the other part of it is you're seeking that forgiveness. So let's look at those two separate situations. Let's look at the first one where you want to forgive somebody, you're thinking about it. I almost think a lot of times it comes from the other side as well, the person that you're forgiving. If somebody says, for example, I made a mistake, more times than not, it wasn't a mistake. It was a decision.
Right.
And
it was a reaction to something.
Yeah. And for it to work both ways, the person who wants to be forgiven or should be forgiven needs to own up to that, needs to be authentic. And sometimes that doesn't take place. And then, the other person can't really release it and
Right.
forgive. But it's bad for both sides. Yeah. When you're holding on to something, it just festers inside of you. And sometimes you can block it out and become numb to it. And then when it comes back, it's just like, Yeah. And then, the animosity goes on and years could go on.
It can. And if you approach somebody when you know that they're not ready, but yet you're ready, that can cause problems. It can even deepen the anger
Yeah.
toward you, if you ask for forgiveness and you really haven't shown that you've done anything to, change whatever it was that they were frustrated over you about, or something that you said. Or they, like, the person that I hurt, she's not ready yet, even though I said, I'm sorry. I didn't say it properly. I didn't say it right. I didn't say, I wasn't ready. Maybe it's the authentic. I wasn't really authentic about my, I'm sorry, because I didn't even really understand where it was that I crossed a line, her line. It's her line, not my line.
Yep.
I felt like I was okay in how I presented it. And she thought I was over the line. So, if I were going to come to me as a coach and say, hey, I need to really apologize to this person, how do we do it? How we show up, how we are authentic, that's a great word, is how we can set ourselves up to have a positive, at least we hope for, a positive view on it. So we get to look at all the ways that we can show up. So you can show up already angry, right? You can show up in a way that says, you better understand this or else. You can show up fearful. You can already show up in a negative way. Like, I know she's not going to accept this. I don't know why I'm even saying it. She's not going to accept it. You can show up in, gosh, if she doesn't do it, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm just going to have to let her go. You can show up in all those different ways that you've already kind of setting yourself up for failure.
Yes. 100%.
Right?
Yep. So true. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the other side, you can show up and say, well, you know what? I'm going to show up in this calm, confident, strong. I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask her first what it was that, I want you to tell me how I hurt you, instead of I'm going to tell you how you should forgive me for what I think I said, So we go through this process together, and the horse is viewing all this. And it always, the horse always finds to stand with you in the space that you're the most authentic, where you're the most positive and feeling good about yourself. And then you could go over to, sometimes they might support you if you're really sad. So maybe you go into the side that says, I'm going to come to them sad. The horse might support you in that area, but it might even nudge you over to, the sadness has to go away and it has to be over here. So, the horse is an integral part of figuring that out too, because we don't always have the answer. The answers are inside of us, but we don't always have them like right in front of our face. So when you work with me, we can put that in front of your face. And I'm talking about, a small thing. It could be a really huge situation. It could be even grief. There's so many things that, that we have to work through, and we don't know how to work them through. And that's where I love to come in. That's where Gestalt is so powerful, is that we could, we really look at what you did, and you can see, maybe even stand in their space. That's a Gestalt thing. And hear what you said to them in a different way. And when you hear it differently, you respond to them differently. You can ask for forgiveness in a different way. Maybe what they have to say is going to be really painful, and you and I can work through the painful part so that when you go to them, you're standing up a little brighter. You're standing up a little bit more confident. You're standing up in a space that doesn't say, I'm really, really sad,
Yep.
So
it's so true. And you said something before, and I want to say it before I lose it. Listening. And I've learned more and more about this. Just be quiet. you're speaking with somebody, no matter what it is, but let's say you're asking for forgiveness. I want you to forgive me. Tell me how you feel. Don't engage. And they even say, even when it comes to negotiating, and this is not a negotiation, but it's along the same principle.
Mhm.
3 seconds. You pause for 3 seconds, and it shows the other person that you care enough to let them be heard. And you just ease back and see what they have to say, and then carefully react to it from that point on. Because I want you to forgive me. I'm really sorry. I'm blah, 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 blah. Well, all you're doing is just watering down, your
Right.
request to be forgiven.
Right. And as I said, if you ask them first what it is that you need to, be forgiven for,
Yeah.
that's a big help, because like I said, she heard something totally different than what I felt and I said. So I have to, and I didn't do this. So this is bringing it back to, I need to know what you heard me say.
Yeah.
I need to know that so that I can, and you have to listen for the answer. Like you said, you have to listen for the answer. And you can't be thinking about how you're going to respond to that answer while she's given it to you. Have to be present to listen to their words. And there's so many times we're in conversations, and like you even said, I want to tell you before I forget about it. You were thinking about something, a way to respond to something that I said, as in, not really maybe listening to the other half of it. I'm not saying that you didn't, but some people do that. They're like, oh yeah, I got to remember to say that, but then you forgot and you didn't really listen to them all. So
no, I was plugged in. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. You know how to do that. That's part of your job. So you do that well, but there are people that do forget,
Sure.
you start thinking about your response and you don't know, say you're in a group setting and people are going around and the second person starts talking to something about, oh, I have a response for that. You're in your head going, I have a response for that. You might miss the third person and the fourth person trying to remember what you want to say when it gets to your point, your part. So, even in group settings, I love to say that to, just stop and listen, stop worrying about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and just be present for the person that's talking. And, that could be new to some people to think about being present. Not that you aren't always, but to think about being quiet and present and available. And, that moves into the authentic part of self,
And it's funny when you talk about the horse isn't talking. When you think about it, the horse is just listening and absorbing the energy and then showing you some signs, whether they're going to be good, bad, favorable. I do want to add one thing. It's almost like people say this and sometimes they don't even know the harm in what they're saying, but I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right.
Yeah, don't say that.
Right.
It's almost like a passive.
Sorry, I made you feel that way is a way to say it instead.
Yeah.
That just that word in between. I'm sorry that I made you feel that way.
Exactly.
That's taking responsibility for it.
Yes.
When you say, I'm sorry you feel that way, that's saying you did something wrong.
And it's almost as if maybe you're not meaning it that way, but it's coming out that way where now you're pushing it on the other person. And you're feeling that way. And I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right.
I don't agree, which may not be the case, but it's just it's a weak way of
right. Well, that's part of, like I said, that's part of the forgiveness is how you say it to somebody. Yes. And when you talk, like you did this and you did that and you did this, and that's how come I reacted this way.
Totally. Instead of
I heard you say this. I heard you say that. I heard you do this. I thought you said that, that changes how they hear it. When you say you're telling them they're already wrong. When you say I, that's describing how you feel about something they did. It's totally different from you did this, so I feel that, instead of I heard you say this, so it made me feel.
Yep.
No, and that's the stuff that we can work on, because when you do go into recovery, when you step into sobriety or you've done, most people, I would say, and I included, did many, many things to hurt people. Because, I could say that I was looser, my talk was looser, I even had blackout moments that I don't even remember why I made somebody mad. I just know the next day that they were mad at me and then answer my phone calls or something like that. I'm like, what did I do? And then I hear through the grapevine what I did or said to them, so, there's family members, there's people we've lied to, there's people that we've cheated on. If that's a part of your background, there's I'll stop and then don't. And, there's verbal abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's sometimes physical abuse. There's so many things that a recovering addict has to wear for a while until they can trust, until you can learn to trust me. I have to ask you to trust me, not you better trust me. There again, that's a different way of saying it. I want to show you that I'm trustworthy instead of I hope you see that I'm trustworthy.
So can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
When we first started and we've been together a bunch of times, and if for anybody's watching, listening, isn't aware, you passed about a month and change ago, almost 2 months ago, your 10-year mark of being sober.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when we first began talking today, you said you're in recovery. And I found that interesting. And I try to understand it, because in my mind, you've recovered. But your term is, and I want you to enlighten me and everybody else, you're in recovery.
I'm in recovery because I am one drink away from being back into being a drunk. It'll only take one drink. And if I say I'm recovered, that means that maybe I can drink again. I went through something and I found the end. So now maybe I can do something else. So I like to say in recovery because it keeps me working on me.
Gotcha.
It keeps me paying attention to how I can improve who I am. Recovered, it will be when I'm in the ground and my soul's going to wherever it needs to go, because it's just really, really important to me to stay in a space. And I don't care if you're an alcoholic or whatever it is, even if you lose somebody, I think you're in recovery of grief for a long, I don't think you ever get recovered. My father died almost 30 years ago, and I still am in recovery over his death. It still hits me. That doesn't mean I'm going to go out and drink over it, but the sadness can still hit me of what he's missing, of wanting to go talk to him, those kind of things. I can fall into that. So I'm still in recovery over his, the grief of losing my father 30 years ago.
And mine passed away about the same amount of time ago.
Yeah.
Not about me, but side note, I recently got hypnotized. First time I ever did it. Took me back to my childhood, my father, and a lot of things that went on back then. No abuse or anything like that, but just what shaped me where I am today.
Yeah.
So, and confronting it and trying to, connect the dots and fix it, if you will. So I'm going to go with that. I'm still recovering from that because I'm still dealing with it today.
Yeah.
Maybe, and it's not an everyday thing, and it's not like I think about it every day, but it is part of your thread of your being because it happened. And
right.
It's where you are today. So you're always working through it. I don't know if you can say that I'm done with that. I put that to rest. Don't have that problem anymore. No.
Right. No. Yeah. But the last week that we talked about pieces of the puzzle. So that's one of your pieces of your puzzle that's inside of yourself.
Sure.
That you have to look at and put it in and maybe you didn't look at it deep enough and you need to look at it again. So even the pieces of puzzles that we put back can go into their own little pieces of puzzles. And you can always say, I don't want to live in the past. Well, maybe you don't live in the past, but your body feels the past. And that's where the horses and all that kind of stuff is so powerful. You might not, I don't know who says it, but we might forget what somebody said to us, but we never forget how they made us feel.
I was going to say that before. I really was. And that is, it's so true. It's, you never forget the way somebody made you feel. I mean, you could yell at me right now, but if you did it in such a nice way, I'd be like, I didn't hear what you said, the words. I felt you. I felt
the pain. Yeah.
Yeah,
and so many people, try to erase it, don't look at it, say, oh, I shouldn't have felt that way, and it's something you need to look at. Some need to be looked at a little deeper than the other, and some are surface, that something might be really surface. The woman that I hurt, I'm talking with this, I'm going to give her a call. I'm going to wait a couple of days. I want her to move through it herself, but, what was behind it? Maybe I wasn't even the fault in the first place. Maybe that's why I don't understand it. She's actually mad at somebody else and she took it out on me because I'm a safe person to take it out on.
Perhaps.
That could very well be it, so.
You know what, Kathy? She may be mad at herself.
Maybe
we don't know. And that's an easy way to project it away from herself for whatever reason. And there's no fault for anybody here.
Right.
But yeah, it comes with understanding how she's feeling, where this all came. And I agree with you. Let it sit for a little while. I guess it goes back to just be quiet.
Right.
You're doing it being quiet in a different way, and then just kind of circle back to it.
Yeah.
We're just
make sure that somebody is ready to respond to you instead of react. That's two different things too. When we're in a fight, we're reacting.
Yeah.
And if you let things calm down, then you get a chance to respond to something. And people listen a lot better if you're responding than if you're, up and reacting to something. So
I'm very level-headed. This is me. I don't like that. But there are times where, situations come up and I'm going to send an email or a text and I say, I'm going to sit on that. And
wait a day.
Yes. Or I'll let a few hours go by and then I'll get back to it. And then you know what I do? I hit delete. I don't even send it. I
like to write some of my angry text in Google Docs so that I don't send it. I don't make the mistake and send it. And then I can really get out what I wanted, what I should say. And then I can do an email of what I want to say.
Sure. But you know what that's technically known as journaling. You're journaling.
Right. Exactly.
In a way.
Big part of my program too. Yes, for sure.
And it should be for everybody. And I'm guilty of not doing that. And I really need to. And not just a vent, just, share my feelings with myself, and we should all do that. One Neigh at a time is your website. When we say Neigh, we mean Neigh.
The horses nicker and neigh. So they get that from one day at a time, obviously. That's where we should live. That's where a horse lives. That's where we should live. And that changes our perspective on the day. The sun just came out. So one day at a time, I'm going to go out and enjoy the sun a little bit today.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little chilly. I see the sun coming out, which makes me happier. So
you got
great conversation. And I hope that people, if you want to chat with me about maybe a forgiveness to somebody, email me at Kathy, Kathy at oneneighatatime.com, or check out my Facebook page, One Neigh at a Time, and message me through there. I'm available. I'd love to chat with you and move you forward and keep you in recovery.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm glad we talked about the recovery thing, because now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it. It's crystal clear. And I'm recovering too. I think we're all recovering from something.
I hope we all are, because then we're moving forward, right?
And we're moving forward. Kathy, great talking with you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Look forward to catching up again. And as we always say,
let it go. Just let it go. Let's work on letting it go.
Yep. All right. We'll catch up next time.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Take care.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.